Hello, this is my advice for people who want to get over their ex, but it also applies to anyone who is currently suffering from their emotions. So, just a little context, I was with my girlfriend or ex girlfriend for 2 years. We met when I was 14 and I was turning 17 by the time we broke up. To make it worse, she was my first ever girlfriend. And to put it simply, I seriously thought that we were going to last forever. I saw my whole future with this one girl. However, the nature of impermanence does not allow a forever. I'd like to start us off with this quote that has always been stuck with me. The bad news is that nothing lasts forever. The good news is also that nothing lasts forever. I'd like to I'd like to give you a moment to contemplate what that might mean. It's good to meditate on thoughts before being given the answer. Okay, so now that you've given some thought to it, the quote is basically a realization of impermanence. It is to accept the ever changing of everything, but at the same time, it gives you clarity. All things that are great will eventually come to an end. Your period of joy, happiness, and luxury will come to an end. However, do not forget that impermanence applies to all things. Your time of suffering, hardship, or whatever it is that brings you sorrow is also only temporarily here. In fact, it is more likely to leave when you realize that eventually you will simply move on from your time of suffering. That is how I was able to move on. And that might sound a bit mind joggling for some people, usually those who are too consumed with their suffering to allow other thoughts to flow. You see, when I first broke up with my girlfriend, I was probably the lowest I'd ever been in my life. I couldn't stand sleeping in my own room because it had reminded me too much of the memories I had of her. For 6 months, I would sleep on the couch in my living room. I felt as if this aching pain would never leave me, and it is because of that thought that it continued to foster. The very first step to moving on is to realize that eventually you will move on. It is that simple. You have to realize whatever pain you are feeling right now will simply fade with time. However, I don't mean to tell you to run from your pain or run from your feelings. I want you to recognize your pain and observe it, and as weird as it might sound, say hello to it. Let's imagine that all the emotions we foster are visitors that come and go from our house being the brain. When we hang out with our friends or watch our favorite TV show, we may be visited by emotions of happiness. Once we are done, your happiness may leave but promises you to come by shortly again. Now, I want you to imagine that your pain is just another guest at your house. Obviously, this is a guest that you do not want to interact with. You may attempt to lock yourself away in your room, indulging in entertainment to distract yourself. While this may provide a short period of comfort, you know it is futile to ignore your guest, since it will not leave until it has completed its visit with you. It may stay in your domain for some time, but like all visitors do, they eventually leave. But before they leave, you must say hello to your visitor, observe the guest, interact, and converse with it. Once you have witnessed everything it has to offer, and it has witnessed everything you have to offer, you may bid it farewell. This is how I want you to observe your pain. Say hello to your pain and tell it, "Hello, pain, you have caused me great suffering, but I know you are not here to stay, and with time you will go like all things do." Now, that isn't a specific scenario that you have to use, but it is an example that you can use. If you want, you can come up with your own imaginary way, But just remember the central point, that your suffering is temporary. Observe it and realize it will diminish with time. So remember, the first step to moving on is to realize that you will move on. Now, that was the first method I would use to help myself move on from my ex, or actually almost all things that I suffer from emotionally. However, if you are trying to go on about your day, but you're constantly barraged with lingering thoughts, here is another method I would use to sort of dampen the current emotions that you feel. Realize that everything you are feeling right now is non physical. Nothing about your pain is coming to bite you. All your emotions are brewing inside the non physical realm of your thoughts. Now, that might seem confusing, but let me first explain how I used this to my advantage. You see, during my heartbreak, I'd often find myself in school, sitting in class consumed by my emotions. In fact, almost constantly, I was on the verge of tears thinking of the past. But then, all of a sudden, I'd take a moment to realize that all my suffering is not physical. So what I do is infiltrate myself with what was physical. I take a deep breath in and heighten my senses towards all things that I could see, hear, touch, or taste. I would indulge in the present moment and observe as much as I could. Let's say in this moment I stopped thinking whatsoever and take the time to notice the table in front of me. I touch it and feel the sturdiness and the texture, or the clothes on my body touching my skin. Then I would listen to the sounds around me, the birds chirping and the distant chatter of families in my neighborhood. Then taste. I'd feel the saliva and bland texture of my mouth, or move on to notice the millions of digital pixels on my screen. Noticing all these things that are physical, you begin to realize how minuscule your emotions are. Wherever you are right now, describe to yourself the physical world you are in. For me, I am a human in a room sitting on a chair with clothes on. I am typing on my keyboard as I write words on a screen. Have you realized now that your emotions are absent from the material world? We almost constantly live in a different world, the realm of the non-physical. This is a personal form of meditation I would use whenever my emotions of pain would invade. I tell myself that nothing about this is actually hurting me. It is either I experience those thoughts or my surroundings. So I chose to experience my surroundings. This is very much linked to the Buddha's teachings to focus on your breath. However, I understand how difficult that might be while you're still trying to have to go about your day. Therefore, I came with this method. So take time to observe your surroundings, compare it to your emotions, and remember, all your suffering is non-physical. Come back to the present moment and experience all things that are physical. If you want to take it a step further, I'd suggest you look into the teachings of the Buddha and focus on your breath. That is pretty much all the advice I can remember, and if there's anything else that I used to do, then I will be posting it. I also hope that whatever you are going through, you are able to overcome it, and if in some way the advice I've laid out to you today was able to help you, then I'm also very happy for being of some help. If you want me to respond to other scenarios or give out advice to something more specific to you, you can comment it and I will try and make a video on it. But yeah, thank you for watching.